Hello everyone, in today's video we are canning grapes. I'm Rebecca from StockingMyPantry.com. Now, grapes might seem like kind of a weird thing to can. You don't hear, at least I don't hear a lot about people canning grapes. You know, you hear a lot about peaches and jellies and beans and all these different things, but you don't hear a whole lot about canning grapes. But if you think back to your days of eating fruit cocktail, and maybe you still eat fruit cocktail, I do, there's grapes in it, and grapes are one of my favorite things. And also, grapes are one of my husband's favorite fruits, and so I love the thought of having some in the pantry. Now, on top of that, one awesome fact is that this has got to be one of the easiest canning projects that you can do. Now, in case you're wondering, this is an approved recipe. I got it from this USDA Complete Guide to Home Canning. And I'm going to just read to you the instructions of how to can the grapes, and then I'm going to go through the process with you. Okay, so it says a quantity, an average of 14 pounds is needed per canner load of 7 quarts. An average of 9 pounds is needed per canner load of 9 pints. Now, I just want to kind of say a word here. I'm making 5 pints because I'm using my Nesco. And what I did is I filled my jars just for the sake of measuring. I put grapes into 5 pints, and I needed a little less than 3 pounds. So I think that them saying that you need 9 pounds for a canner load of 9 pints, that would, if you're going by that logic, that would be 5 pounds that you would need for 5 pints. So you might want to buy 5 pounds just in case. So, and obviously you can just eat fresh anything that doesn't fit into the jars. Okay, now it says quality. Choose unripe, tight skin, preferably green seedless grapes harvested 2 weeks before they reach optimum eating quality. Now, this is great if you grow grapes. I do not. So I got these at the grocery store. They're good quality. I just bought them yesterday, so I'm canning them as soon as I can. But they're obviously not unripe. It's not 2 weeks before the optimal time to eat them. So, that's just the way it is for those of us who do not grow grapes. But if you do, you'll want to harvest them a little bit before they would really be ready to eat. Okay, so the procedure is to stem, wash, and drain the grapes. And that's what I've done. You can see that there's no stems, no, anything on them now. I did this last night. Wash them, rinse them, and then put them in this bowl in the fridge. And I just took it out this morning. All right. And then the procedure is to prepare very light or light syrup. And so let's go do that now. Let's go prepare the syrup. Okay, so in this pot, I have 3 3/4 cups of water. I'm going to turn the heat on, and I'm dumping in 1 cup of sugar. Now, the amount of sugar to water that you use is really up to you. You can do a light syrup, a very light syrup, whichever you want, and I will link to instructions for how much sugar and how much water to use. I'm making a light syrup, and this is the right amount for light syrup. So 3 3/4 cup water, 1 cup of sugar. Now, the only thing that I need to do here is I just need to bring it to a boil. As you can see, there's sugar that's undissolved that I just poured in is undissolved. So basically, we just need to bring this to a boil, and then we can make sure all the sugar is dissolved, turn the heat off, and that's all there is to it. So it's super simple. And by the way, while we're waiting for the sugar to come to a boil, I just want to read to you from, probably can't read it, can't see it, but anyway, it's from the USDA book about syrup. Adding syrup to canned fruit helps to retain its flavor, color, and shape. It does not prevent spoilage of the foods. And I think sometimes people think that. But anyway, the following guidelines for preparation and using syrup offers a new, very light syrup, which approximates the natural sugar content of many fruits. The sugar content in each of the 5 syrups is increased by about 10%. Okay, so I am doing the light syrup. I'm doing about a half of a recipe. And the procedure is heat water and sugar together, bring to a boil, and pour over raw fruits in jars. For hot packs, bring water and sugar to a boil, add the fruit, reheat to a boil, and fill into the jars immediately. I'm going to do a raw pack, so I'm just going to leave the syrup in the pot with the lid on while I fill up my jars with grapes. The syrup's mostly dissolved at this point, but I'm going to let it go ahead and come to a boil. Okay, you can see that it's to a boil, and this process took about 7 minutes. Now let's go ahead and fill our jars. Okay, so I have my hot syrup prepared, and we're going to go on to the next step. Okay, so you have a choice of hot pack or raw pack. With hot pack, you blanch the grapes in boiling water for 30 seconds, drain, and proceed as for raw pack. I am doing raw pack. So raw pack, fill hot jars with grapes and hot syrup, leaving 1-inch headspace. Okay, so I already have my jars in the canner. They've been heated and the water is hot. Now, since this is a raw pack recipe, I don't have things as hot as I would if I was doing a hot pack. I have the water temperature in the canner at about 140 degrees. And so I have a whole video on how to heat your jars, and so you can refer to that if you need more information. Okay, so let's go ahead and let's fill up our jars with grapes. And just as a side note, let me say that I put some water in the jars and some water in the canner. I'm dumping the hot water back into the canner, and I'll have the right amount of water that I want that way. Okay, I'm going to go ahead and close the lid on my canner just to keep the water hot while I do this step. As I said, I already kind of measured out the grapes, and so I should have the right amount. And that's just a little tip for you if you're doing a single ingredient, something easy like grapes, is before you do the canning is go ahead and just measure things out into the jars, put them into the jars to see how much you need. I've done that with things like carrots, things that are just easy to measure. And so I should have the right amount, more or less. Obviously things always go into the jar a little bit differently each time, but what I did is I just, pulled things off the stem, pulled the grapes off the stem, dumped them into the jars, and then I put them into wash them and all that. And obviously I washed my jars since there had been these grapes in them, and it's always a good idea to wash your jars anyway. So okay, my bowl's empty, and you can see that each of the jars is filled to about 1-inch headspace. I might kind of move a few grapes around here and there. I've got a couple sticking up a little bit more than others. And so anyway, but I've got my 1-inch headspace, and now it's time to fill up the jars with the syrup. Okay, so this is where a canning funnel definitely comes in handy. I'm just gonna ladle the syrup into the jars. I always like to start a little bit less, just in case I run out of syrup. I can always add a little bit of water to it if need be. And I want there to be pretty much an even amount of sweetness in each jar. And by the way, the syrup does really help to maintain the color. So if you're tempted not to use syrup, which I get because I would generally prefer not to have the sugar, but it really does help with the overall quality. And so when we eat canned fruit, I kind of look at it as a dessert. Okay, this looks to be just about perfect. I have a tiny bit of syrup left in the pot. I'm going to go ahead and debubble these now, and then I'll need to add a little bit more syrup likely. Okay, so I have a couple of jars that aren't all the way full, don't have quite enough syrup, so I need to add a little bit more. Okay, and they are all just perfect. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead now and wipe the rims, get the lids on, and then we'll get them into the canner. Okay, so now we'll put the lids on. And we'll put the rings fingertip tight. And we'll get them into the canner. Okay, so now this is a water bath recipe. And you can either steam can it or you can water bath can it. I'm going to steam can it in my Nesco. I do have a video with instructions for that. I also have a video with instructions for water bath canning. Steam canning is an approved method. However, there aren't any actual approved instructions for steam canning in the Nesco. So if you're more comfortable, by all means, you can water bath this instead, okay? But the time is going to be the same for either one. Okay, so let's look at the time. It says if you're doing hot packing, so if you had blanched your grapes and you were 1,000 feet or low, you would do 10 minutes. I'm doing the raw pack, so the time for that is 15 minutes. However, due to my altitude, I need to add 5 minutes on, so I will be setting the timer for 20 minutes. Let's go ahead and do that now. Okay, so the lid's down, I'm closing it, and I'm gonna make sure that the valve is in the exhaust position. Then I'm pressing water bath steam, and I'm putting in a time of, of 20 minutes. And remember, your time would be 15 minutes if you're 1,000 feet or lower. And then I'm going to press start. Now I have a whole separate video on how to water bath can in the Nesco, and so refer to that if you need more step-by-step instructions. But in short, this digital chase is going to go around. I'm going to wait for a steady stream of steam, and then I'm going to push the start button again, and that will start the countdown timer. And just to emphasize, with a water bath or steam, your valve, either your black one or your green one, whatever you have based on your altitude, it stays in the exhaust position the entire time. So I'm going to bring you back after the grapes are done so you can see the finished product. See you in just a bit. Okay, the grapes are all out of the canner. There was no siphoning. It looks like they've all sealed. It's a little too early to tell, but they look great. I'm going to lift up a jar and hopefully you can get a close-up of it. I did notice that there were a couple of grapes that split a little bit, but not bad. And anyway, everything looks great. I'm looking forward to giving them a try. So definitely the next time you see a sale on grapes, grab some. This is an easy project to do. It takes probably less work than almost anything else that you could can. So if you like the grapes and fruit cocktail, I would definitely recommend giving this a try. So I hope that you enjoyed this video. If you did, I would really appreciate it if you would like the video and if you would also subscribe to my YouTube channel. Thanks so much, everyone. Have a great day.